So, hey Sandra, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no worries. As I told you, I think it's thank you for creating such an initiative because small businesses don't get enough airtime during times of crisis. So I think it's how do you say? It's a big thank you from my side to you.
Oh, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. Well, this is the whole reason why I started all of this. I think it's so important to bring exposure to small businesses and startups because let's face it, they're also suffering. So it's not just
Absolutely.
the medium size or the big players. And to be very honest with you, I'm convinced that the smallest players right now and individuals are suffering the most because they're not getting the exposure that they need. And I think there's this kind of people are walking around not really realizing what it means for a startup if they don't have income for a couple of months, right? So it's
No.
very tricky. So how do you perceive that? What's going on in your life right now?
Look, I mean, I sort of, again, being a planner, I've always made sure that I have enough money on the side for crisis, during our crisis savings. Definitely, look, the business definitely took a hit in terms of client referrals. So, for those who are probably unaware of what we do, I run a nutrition service or a dietetic service. So, I'm a clinical dietitian by trade. What we do is we offer one-to-one consults in our physical practice, but we also have online consults too. So this whole virtual world isn't new to us, which is a savior. Um, we also do a lot of corporate work, which is another side of the business that took a massive hit. But again, there's an upside to it, moving online and consulting and projects and events, etc.
Mm.
Um, so my main areas of specialty in terms of being a clinical dietitian is gut health, digestive disease, and sports nutrition. So working with professional athletes, but also recreational ones too.
That's amazing. I mean, so tell me a little bit more about this whole digital side of things, because obviously, needless to say, you and I would be doing this usually in person, like sitting next to each other. Now we're doing it over Zoom, so thank God for that. But how can I imagine or visualize like what's going on? So people obviously, their dietary issues don't stop because of Corona, right? So what
Yeah.
kind of conversations are you having, and how are you helping?
So right now with our current clients, obviously everything's moved online. With our new clients that are coming through, people still have digestive issues. People still have gut problems, intolerances or allergies that they need to manage. And right now, in terms of COVID, obviously food supply or the ease or the luxury of having food readily available, it has taken a hit. So we need to make sure we are able to help our clients put a, let's say, gut friendly shopping list. The other thing that we're getting a lot of requests in terms of, or a lot of help on with, is stress eating. So a lot of emotional eating happening right now. People afraid of weight gain, given that they're more sedentary. And again, I have my opinion or my approach with that because it's absolutely fine to gain weight. I mean, again, our weight is meant to fluctuate throughout our whole lives, and I think it's better to invest more energy in focusing on the behaviors around us rather than that number on the scale. And this is, one thing that I'm trying to bring people back down to reality. Um, because especially as I said, during times of crisis, or this is all new to us. This is a totally new situation for everyone right now. And sometimes we need reminding that we come from a place of privilege. So this is, as I said, it's also important to bring people back to reality and to focus on what's important. But as I said, it's really focusing on the behaviors around food and helping them navigate this new world, or our new reality right now.
What you're saying is so powerful in terms of the privilege. I just had a conversation that I posted yesterday with somebody who was also outlining that there are people on this planet that are currently really suffering right now. We see a lot of that. And if you are actually in a fortunate position where you're stable or you live in a society that is actually taking care of you and there are certain means that you have
Exactly.
to actually get through this situation, you really are privileged. And I think we definitely need to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Even when it comes to nutrition, the fact that we're starting to nitpick what sort of vegetables we want to stock up on, what vegetables are high in vitamin C or zinc and this, that also comes from a place of privilege. And
And
this is why I
yeah,
think
go for it. Sorry.
no, and I just wanted to say is that what's really important right now is it's not a time for food shaming, and this is something that I'm also bringing up with a lot of my clients. It's really not a time to food shame. It's not a time of exclusion. It's more a time of inclusion and just doing with what we've got available at this point in time.
Hmm. I mean, I was going to crack the joke. Essentially, what concerned me a lot, and this has a lot to do with psychology, and I'm sure you have to deal with that in your line of business as well, is people were super concerned about the toilet paper consumption, right? And I was like, shouldn't you be more worried about food right now than toilet paper? I mean, you cannot eat
I
toilet
was gonna exactly, but if they were concerned about toilet, I mean, if someone needs that amount of toilet paper, they need to see a gut health dietitian. So something's not right with your gut right now if you need that amount of toilet paper.
Yeah, I honestly, I did a little bit of research because I was like, this must be psychological, and sure enough, it has a lot to do with security, and
Absolutely.
you're controlling the situation even though there is no way, right?
Absolutely. Again, going back to the panic buying, etc. We come from a place of luxury. We always had food available to us, and now we're at a time where we might not. Um, Hence the panic buying or the hoarding, just to feel that sense of security given our uncertain times. Um, so yeah, as I said, it's very interesting. I mean, again, just from my place as being a dietitian, it's very interesting to see people's purchasing behavior and just seeing what people stock up on.
Mhm.
Um, so
So you brought this point up a couple of times, and that's why I want to deep dive a little bit on it. So what is your, and I understand, everybody's a little bit different, but if there's some key outline or key rules, what do you recommend people actually do buy? And and let's say if food should become scarce, what do you recommend people do? I mean, are there some basic things that we can talk about?
I mean, look, it's not about food becoming scarce. It's just about, what has a longer shelf life. So if you still have access to fresh produce, then by all means buy them and maybe buy produce that lasts a little bit longer. Things like carrots, for example, cabbage, potatoes. So being strategic with your shopping. We don't have a let's say in Switzerland right now, we don't have a food shortage. We just have a shortage of staff, maybe. The demand is way too high. So I think if people can just calm down and just, if we're all in this together, companies would be able to, let's say supermarkets would be able to stock up the shelves on time. I mean, there are supermarkets that are absolutely fine. Our store next to us has plenty of produce.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, it's absolutely fine to, I mean, and this is COVID aside, it's absolutely fine to rely on canned and frozen food. Being someone who's a working mom and being extremely busy, these foods come in handy. I need to, as much as I love my job and being a dietitian, I don't want to be in the kitchen for half an hour to an hour. I want to whip up a balanced meal in 8 minutes if I can. And that potentially some nights requires to focus on convenience foods. But again, being strategic with what you buy. So there's really, again, I really don't like demonizing certain foods, especially during this time. But we do have a certain shopping list focusing more on produce that has a longer shelf life, as I mentioned, certain canned foods, things like herbs and spices, frozen veg, frozen berries. So there's a lot, as I said, I think, again, within the context of where we live in right now, food shortage is not something we need to worry about.
I totally agree with you. Any foods we should stay away from in any case.
Absolutely. To be honest with you, I know right now, as we call them, when in times of fear, you will have a lot of wellness woo-woos and unicorns that will come out and take advantage of people's fear and vulnerability and start promoting misinformation and pseudoscience. One being fear of certain foods, that you should not eat this. Sugar is cancerous, or sugar is going to disrupt your immune system, etc. I think rather than come from that place of, as I said, of exclusion, I'm more of a person that wants to focus on what can you eat more of, rather than what should you stay away from. And the biggest example that I use is people who've always feared carbs, or for weight loss and so on. Right now, everyone's stocking on your staples in your pantry of pastas and rice, etc. So we actually have some clients who are struggling with that because they have such a bad relationship with these foods.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I have no doubt about it. I mean, that those are the first foods that go out off the shelf right away, right?
Yeah,
It's so deeply ingrained in our culture that we have pasta and rice and, well, Switzerland, potatoes and cheese and eggs and all this
yeah,
stuff. So yeah, absolutely, those are the first things that usually come into the household, right?
yeah. I mean, I started my business to fight misinformation and to fight pseudoscience. It started off as a blog 10 years ago, and here I am 10 years now being a physical practice. I mean, I started the brand based on a blog,
Mhm.
and it was to help people navigate the world of misinformation. And if there's one piece of advice that I give people right now, especially during these times, is don't get your nutrition advice from social media
Mhm.
and don't Google. There's just so much out there right now.
Isn't that true in general, though? I think a lot of people have anxiety because of social media, right? So
Oh,
maybe stay
absolutely.
away from that
Don't get me started.
altogether.
Don't get me started there.
Absolutely. So you are having actually a webinar with my wife on Friday, right?
Yes, I am.
Perfect.
And
So
it's
we should promote that a little bit. What are you going to be talking about?
I think it's talking, I mean, mainly what we want to focus on is talking about real life scenarios of my own clients and what they've been going through. Stress eating is one of it, busting any myths around it, the whole concept of boosting your immune system. Because again, if you look at the science or scientists and the medical community, there's no such thing as boosting your immune system. So it's become such a marketing claim right now. So we're going to try to dispel all these myths around, what foods should you be consuming to boost your immune system. We're going to talk about stress eating, anyone that has weight concerns. We're going to talk about the produce, as I said, fresh versus canned versus frozen, what's best. So there's a whole list of things we're going to be chatting about.
I myself cannot wait. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to actually reshare it with this post to make sure that people know about this.
Amazing.
You have really given me some really cool and amazing insights. So I really appreciate that. Maybe to end the interview on a fun note. I mean, I know you have you have a child, and you live with your partner, and So what has changed in your life, and how do you guys get along cooped up at home?
I think well, my son definitely thinks we're on a permanent holiday, so that's quite that's interesting. I've also discovered that I'm not so bad when it comes to gardening. So far I'm keeping all my plants alive. We've planted a little veggie patch, but we're lucky enough, again, being grateful and super lucky that we have an arrangement with our neighbors who are also very how do you say, hard workers in the startup industry or in corporate, and we have a daycare shift arrangement.
Mhm.
So we have a schedule for the kids, so that's really kept our sanity, I think, more or less under control. But I think, yeah, we're all, as I said, one thing that makes it easier is that we're knowing that it's not just us, we're all in this together.
Mhm.
Eases the anxiety around this whole situation a little bit. But obviously, it's hard being around, even though you love your family, it's hard being around them all the time.
I think that's just being honest, right? I mean, in the end, when
Absolutely.
you're constantly together, it really requires great teamwork and
Oh my God,
also
yes.
some internal social distancing, maybe every once in a while.
Totally. I think, and this is, again, we're lucky I have an office here. We have different parts of the apartment. My husband and I would kind of negotiate who's got the office when, otherwise I've got the terrace outside. So even just making sure you still have a bit of alone time, all things given.
Maybe I know I said last question, but this one actually really is the last
Oh,
question.
tell me.
Obviously, you do a lot of amazing work, and I'm a fan of what you do, and of you guys, obviously. So, where can someone find you, and what's the best way to reach out to you and get in touch with you? And what are your plans for the future? I always say, let's start making lemonade. This is the time to refocus and re-strengthen. So maybe a
Absolutely.
word on that.
So for people to find us, they can always jump online. So people generally find us through the website. So that's nutrition-az.com, or on social media, although I try to distance myself as much as I can. In terms of what's planned for the future, as I said, I think now it's a time to reinvent ourselves. So really we're moving online. despite, a lot of my corporate work or corporate events being put on hold, now I've got a lot of companies requesting talks for their online well-being events as well. And this is something that I've been promoting. We have virtual cook-alongs, or like, it'll be set for April. We haven't, set the date yet, but IBS Awareness Month starts today. So that's people for, suffering from irritable bowel syndrome. So we have a lot of activities planned for this month. And it's also, again, trying to offer support and to expose ourselves to more people. We're opening up our private Facebook groups for people who suffer from gut disorders. I'm offering 15-minute free calls, although I never offer freebies. Let's say this, I haven't offered freebies in a very long time. But I think it's during these times, it's important to know that people can come to us and approach us, and we're there readily available to have a chat. Because I don't want them Googling their symptoms away and really trying to navigate all the world of misinformation out there, especially when it comes to their health.
That's such an important point. And that's also a message for all the startups and the small businesses out there. Right now really is a time to reevaluate. It's a time to reach out to people. It's even the time to give out some free stuff just to really make sure that you remain, top of mind. I understand everybody needs to make money to survive, but unfortunately, as crazy as it may sound in this time, we really need to also figure out what other strings we can pull to get into people's lives and help them during this difficult time.
Absolutely, and I think one thing that because I've spoken to other startups as well, and my motto is don't wait for opportunities, you create them or you actually chase them. Don't just sit there and wait. And you always have to reinvent yourself. I mean, being part of a startup or a small business, you need to be adaptable. You need to kind of, change and change with the time and be flexible. So taking this time, I mean, I've taken last week to purely just focus on, how can we reinvent? How can we revamp things? With what we've got, and then just move with the times.
Exactly. Perfect. Listen, Sandra, thank you so much for taking the time again. And it's been amazing to talk to you. And I hope that we'll get to see each other very soon in person again.
Definitely. A big hug. I think I've never been a hugger, but I think after this, I'm just going to hug everyone I meet.
Absolutely. We just talked about this, actually. I think there's going to be a big hugging convention once all of this is over.
Absolutely. No, but thank you. As I said, thank you for this chat, and thank you for the initiative.